Hello there.
This is where the fun begins.
Hey there guys, Unofficial Star Wars here. Hope you're all doing well, and welcome to my Star Wars The Mandalorian Season 3 Episode 6 breakdown video. In this video, we're going to be discussing many of the different Easter eggs and things that you might have missed throughout this episode. That there being said, let's go ahead and hop right on into it. For those of you that usually watch our breakdown videos into the regards of both The Mandalorian Season 3 and also the now concluded Bad Batch Season 2, would know that I normally take a read from an article, such as space.com, IGN.com, to gather more of a different perspective per se on the overall episodes here. However, in this video, I don't necessarily want to do that because the common theme that I've been seeing here for this specific episode of The Mandalorian Chapter 22 have been kind of hateful at that. And a lot of these sources and articles have been simply complaining about every other thing that happens in this episode, and I don't agree with that whatsoever. If for anything, this has to be one of my most favorite episodes of Season 3. However, to still give you guys that different perspective of what maybe other people might be thinking about this overall episode of The Mandalorian, I for myself have been overly loving it. I loved this overall episode. You guys can see and hear more about that in our reaction video for this episode, Episode 6 of The Mandalorian Season 3, out now here on the channel. To give you guys an idea of what maybe some other sources and articles have been kind of reviewing and saying here about this episode, taking a quick read from space.com, I'll have their article linked in the description down below for you guys to see there as well. Things immediately feel off as we're thrown right into a prologue centered on a Quarren travelers who are stopped by an Imperial cruiser captained by one of Bo-Katan's former companions, Axe Woofs. As the article reads, who had been rumored to be a part of Season 3 for quite some time as well. They're now privateers working for anyone who pays them handsomely. This opening scene doesn't feel off because of the content itself. Of course, it's weird to have, well, aliens and awkwardly lingers on a forbidden romance and everything like that between the Quarren leader and a Mon Calamari species who has escaped his family. Typically, offbeat prologues in The Mandalorian help shape what comes right after, but this scene ultimately goes nowhere exactly, and only is there to give us the introduction of Bo-Katan's previous Mandalorian companions, the Night Owls. The article continues by reading that Will Din Djarin and Bo-Katan Kryze have to deal with some Mon Calamari family drama along the Mandalorian warriors they need to recruit in order to earn back their trust. As seen at the end of this episode, which in my own thoughts and opinions was beyond amazing, we see Bo-Katan become the rightful leader of these Mandalorians, and furthermore become the rightful owner of the Darksaber, making her the leader of these Mandalorians and the leader of Mandalore. The episode is titled Guns for Hire, and it would have been pretty cool, the article reads, if this episode honored its title. Nope, scratch all that, says the article. We're doing low quality riffs on a iRobot Blade Runner instead, and this felt nothing like any of those in my thoughts and opinions. The article continues to read that honestly we're all accustomed to Star Wars animation taking some time off to play with all the kinds of genres and honor famous literary works, but a big difference between the Clone Wars, or the Bad Batch, and the Mandalorian live action is that the latter only has 8 episodes to tell an entire story arc each season, so side quests typically have to offer some degree of progression, and in my thoughts and opinions, that's exactly what this episode did. It honestly made this overall arc of this season move a lot forward, with making Bo-Katan the now rightful owner and leader of these Mandalorians and giving her the Darksaber as well. It finally feels like that we might be able to actually get somewhere. However, I do mention in our reaction video here on the channel, as I had mentioned, you guys can see that now, I do mention that this episode of The Mandalorian does kind of remind me in a way of what the Clone Wars kind of is. I think this has something to do with maybe like this planet kind of feels like what Mandalore once was in the Clone Wars, and I think that they even did this maybe purposely, Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni, especially now as we're seeing our Mandalorian heroes move towards regaining Mandalore and making it a livable, habitable planet. Oh yeah, and it was pretty cool to see Christopher Lee as the head of security on this planet as well. I love a lot of his works, such as Back to the Future and Modern Family, so it was pretty cool to see him, especially after reporting here on the channel that he would be appearing in the 3rd season of The Mandalorian. It was just a kind of when, where, and how type of thing. I also kind of glossed over Jack Black and Lizzo appearing in this episode as well. Now, people are calling these cameos for whatever reason. They're not necessarily cameos. Sure, they're more A-list actors out there, but they're still playing a prominent role in this season. I don't know, I have a weird thing with people misusing the term cameo. Cameos, I think, more rather mean the idea that you would see a character appear for, like, what, 5 minutes and then never see them again. However, when it comes to having Ahsoka Tano, Boba Fett, Luke Skywalker appearing in The Mandalorian, they play significant roles. They even have their own shows at this point, aside from Luke Skywalker. But hey, never say never on that. Base.com in their article continues to read that Chapter 22 is too big of a detour too late into the season, that's been more focused on building up a larger plot and raising the stakes in a more method type of way, such as change of general stance already riled up some fans, but we've already been finding it largely refreshing for a show that needed to step out of its comfort zone just a bit. This episode, however, is exactly the type of adventure you'd like to go on way earlier in the season, and I do have to agree with that to a point. I think that this episode could have been nicer to have in earlier on in this overall season here, but don't get me wrong, that doesn't make this a bad episode in my eyes. I've mentioned it previously before here on the channel into the regards of our Mandalorian Season 3 videos. I do find it a little bit weird that the marketing and promoting the trailers point towards the main theme, the main story arc and narrative for Season 3 of The Mandalorian would be about traveling to Mandalore to redeem himself in the living waters of the Mines of Mandalore. However, when that is done in the first 2 episodes, it is kind of up in the air of where is the direction and the narrative and the story going to go from here, and I think that it has to do a lot with getting the Mandalorian people to come together more so of, and I think that is something that they need to do a little bit more with, telling that story a little bit more. I think that's just kind of like little segments, little scenes that we've gotten towards, like in the middle or towards the end of these episodes, such as, for example, having Bo-Katan and the armorer in the previous episode in their discussion, having the armorer take Bo-Katan her helmet off and then telling her, go find other Mandalorians, bring them back to us, Navarro, we'll all come together and we'll all go retake Mandalore. It definitely does feel like the general storyline is going towards that direction. It's just something I think that they need to imply on a little bit more. And as I have already previously mentioned plenty of times throughout this video, this has to be one of my most favorite episodes of the 3rd season of The Mandalorian. I literally think the only thing I might have added to this episode was maybe some type of Moff Gideon scene or update on him, as we had learned with that big cliffhanger at the end of the previous episode, which I do have a video explaining that more in depth, seeing how the New Republic pilot Carson Teva reveals and learns that Moff Gideon never even made it to his trial for the New Republic and had escaped the New Republic, and furthermore had actually been rescued or broken out of the New Republic jail from other Mandalorians, as they had seemingly found Beskar alloy found on the crime scene there. It definitely feels like a big, like, what if, like, what's going on with that? We want to see more with that, and just kind of exactly where that story is going to be headed with that. If for anything, this season heavily reminds me a lot of what Season 1 was to a point. Season 1 didn't have a lot of, like, a direct narrative or story going for all that much. It was simply just stay alive, protect the kid Grogu, and we'll make it out, we'll be fine. And nothing was really necessarily set up towards the end of the season, of where they had revealed that Moff Gideon is kind of like this big bad type of villain out there, and furthermore that he does have the Darksaber and everything like that. And I think the big question that a lot of people have been asking for quite some time, ever since The Mandalorian Season 2, was how was Season 3 going to continue the story and top the story at that? How could the 3rd season of The Mandalorian be better and go beyond and above of what we saw in the 2nd season of The Mandalorian? And I think the answer to that question is that you just don't. It's kind of similar to what we're seeing with the MCU, with the Marvel Cinematic Universe. If you're a Marvel fan, I have a Marvel channel linked in the description down below, by the way, but essentially what we're seeing with the MCU is that they peaked with Avengers Endgame, so now they have to kind of reel back in, take a step back, and then kind of go from there and kind of build up more hype and build up towards another climatic type of event like that. And I think that they're seeing the same thing here with The Mandalorian and with Star Wars, which is honestly really exciting. Now, everything that we saw towards the end of this episode here, I kind of already explained a little bit about it in our reaction video here on the channel, but we see Bo-Katan challenge Axe Wolves to becoming the new leader of these Mandalorians, as she once was, as we saw in the 2nd season of The Mandalorian. And of course, we also learn at the beginning of the season that Bo-Katan reveals, like, where are your people and everything, like Din Djarin's asking her. Bo-Katan reveals that they went off and they don't, like, believe in me anymore because they don't have the Darksaber. They don't care about Mandalore or anything like that anymore because I don't have the Darksaber. They don't go underneath my rule, pretty much. So her coming back at Axe Wolves, who's now the leader of these Mandalorians Mandalorians and like challenging him to become the new leader and everything like that of these Mandalorians. It was really fascinating to see. I think a part of that could have been like kind of skipped, like having Axe Wolfs and Bo-Katan, don't get me wrong, was pretty cool. It was a pretty cool fight. I really liked it. But then you have Din Djarin whips out the Darksaber and explains just about what I've been kind of talking about off and on here and like all of our videos here regarding the Mandalorian season 3. I think the best way to sum it up is kind of like in this meme, and that's pretty much what Din is like explaining to the rest of these Mandalorians of what happened. We have Din, who won the Darksaber from Moff Gideon, who then loses the Darksaber to this mechanical droid in episode 2, technically on a technical level, and then who is rescued by Bo-Katan in the second episode, who makes her kind of like the owner of the Darksaber essentially. She defeated the mechanical droid, who would have been like the owner of the Darksaber on a technical level, and then obtained the Darksaber that way. So it wasn't necessarily like in a direct manner of like, hey, Din Djarin, fight me, is kind of like what Bo-Katan was doing. It was kind of like in an indirect way, and it still works, and it's interesting to see that they did come back around to that, because this is something that a lot of Star Wars fans out there had been kind of discussing and talking about and saying like, hey, that's kind of like a plot hole in a way. So to see them come back at that, come back around full circle and say, hey, we didn't forget about this, that is technically right, so it makes Bo-Katan the true leader of these Mandalorians. Anyway, I think from there we're going to see these Mandalorians go back to Navarro and kind of like join hands with the Children of the Watch. You have these two kind of like different creeds, these two different Mandalorian cultures, of one of which is kind of like weird, the Children of the Watch, keeping your helmets on and everything like that, and then you know, like these Night Owls, which seems to be a lot more, as I had also spoken about in my reaction video here on the channel. I definitely wasn't anticipating there to be like this much or this many Mandalorians for the Night Owls, so also kind of seeing these two Mandalorian creeds kind of come together, it definitely feels like the Children of the Watch, the ones that keep their helmets on Navarro, are going to be more accepting of these other Mandalorians, and vice versa. Hopefully we'll see the same with the Night Owls, and these two forces kind of come together to help better rejoin with Mandalore. I think that there's a little bit more going on with Mandalore as well. I think maybe potentially the Empire could be taking control of it, because they're not able to be tracked by the New Republic to Mandalore, plus nobody wants to go to Mandalore because everybody believes that it's uninhabitable, it's poisoned, and you just can't go on it. I'll have more videos talking about some more theories of what we can see for the rest of the third season of The Mandalorian, as well as kind of more deeper diving into everything that we saw with Axe Wolfs versus Bo-Katan, and how Bo-Katan is really the true leader of Mandalore here as well, and all of the Mandalorians. Overall, I loved this overall episode here. As I had mentioned, it's one of my most favorite episodes of the third season of The Mandalorian. I honestly can't understand why so many people don't like this episode. It didn't feel like filler whatsoever, especially with everything that we got at the end of the episode here as well. I think the only thing I would have added to this episode is maybe some type of Moff Gideon scene or update on what his whereabouts are or what he could be up to, and I think that we will see more on that in the coming episodes, these final 2 episodes here. Of course, I would love to hear all of your thoughts and opinions in the comment section down below. What did you guys think here about this overall episode of The Mandalorian? Did it feel like filler? Did you guys like it? And what did you guys think about what was going on towards the end of the episode with Bo-Katan versus Axe Wolfs? I would love to hear all of your thoughts and opinions in the comment section down below. If you haven't already, hit the subscribe button as well to join here on the channel, and that notification bell to be notified for when new videos are coming out here on the channel. We cover and talk about anything Star Wars related, such as Star Wars news, leaks, rumors, theories, and breakdowns here on the channel. If you guys are into any of it, hit the subscribe button and join us here today. And so until next time, I'll catch you guys in the next video. Have a great one, guys. May the Force be with you as always. Peace out.